Hi, I'm Spider and I'm back. I'm back because I didn't want to leave you all like in a mystery tour. The way I ended my last session, okay? Alright, so this is Spider's CFL Red-Zone Rule recap, okay, and highlights and facts, okay? Okay, of course, this will be my 8th session, so it's very important to watch part 1, part 2, and part 3 first. And that the part 1 is my intro and how I come up with my CFL Red-Zone Rule. The part 2 is the presentation I made itself to the Commission of the CFL on January 31st of 2018. And part 3 is the result, the decision, and the conclusion. Okay, and then part 4, part 5, part 6, part 7, and now part 8. Okay, so I wanted to actually apologize on my last YouTube session for all the okays. Okay, I must have broken a record. It's a funny thing because I don't even know I'm doing it, because I asked my friend, okay, about that, and she says, you don't even say it. So, you know, it's the unfamiliarity of working on a YouTube video set that I've never done in my life, okay? And it's almost like I'm check marking and verifying everything I'm saying. I don't even know I'm saying okay, so I apologize for that. And actually, Steve Armitage told me when I told my first 3 YouTube sessions were up on YouTube, I said, don't be too hard on me, I'm a pure amateur. You know what he said to me? He's such a nice guy. He's unbelievable. What a nice person. He said, I've been working in broadcasting for 50 years and I still make mistakes. So, okay, I also like to apologize as well, okay, in my part 7 session when I said other top CFL top players going into CFL, which I meant to say going to the NFL, okay. Also during my top 10 super features and benefits part, okay, on the attached CFL Red-Zone Kick, I said CFL Red-Zone Rule, okay, rather than CFL Red-Zone Kick. And when I said it would create more revenue streams, I said merchandise tag sales. I meant to say sponsorship tag sales. I also didn't want to leave you, like I said, like that, timing out like that the camera timed out. And my son said, you want to say stay tuned, don't say we'll see you in the spring, because you don't know what will come up, okay? So I just want to dive into a little bit, okay, about my CFL Red-Zone Rule, okay? First of all, the 10 features and super benefits, 10 super features and benefits I outlined for you, presented to you in my last session. There's actually 20. And actually, if you go back to part 2, and I made the presentation on my part 2 YouTube session, I go over pretty well all of them. Okay, they're all powerful and very impactful, and they will deliver, okay? So I just want to talk a little bit about my CFL Red-Zone Rule, and in a nutshell, I'll try to explain to you simply, okay? Alright, see the diagram in front? So, okay, can you imagine that at a CFL Red-Zone, game live with the field like looking like that, with my, the 20-yard line outlined in red with the 20, okay, number 20 on the 20-yard line outlined in red, okay, in both end zones when the CFL teams in the red zone on CTV, okay, which is Bell Line, TSN, HDTV. They could put a striking, eye-catching CFL Red-Zone Rule graphic over top of that field diagram, and put a sponsorship tag as well as the CFL Red-Zone Kick on the 35, actually from the 42. Okay, they could do the same with another sponsorship tag on the CFL Red-Zone Kick graphic. Okay, so let's get to a live setting. Okay, in a CFL game, if you're watching on TV. Okay. Like the Eastern Final in Ottawa, when the first 2 plays, Ottawa marches down the field, they get on the 2-yard line, and the fans are booing because they want them to go for it and third down to score a touchdown, and they pack up their bags and kick an easy chip shot field goal, okay, that fans don't want to see, okay? It doesn't sell CFL 3-down football. They want to see touchdowns scored in the red zone. Same thing happened at duplication, like I said in one of my YouTube sessions, that I sent to the Rob Black and his crew, TSN, okay, simultaneously, at the time the game was going on. Same thing happened. They marched down on the 2-yard line, did the exact same thing. By the way, they only ever go for it on third down on the 1-yard line, basically. They're on the 5-yard line, they never go for it, okay? They don't use their third down. What my CFL Red-Zone Rule will erase all that, change all that. All that boring, I mean, so predictable and so repetitive in the CFL, basically playing 2-down football in the red zone that no one wants to see. So what my CFL Red Zone Rule will do will enforce CFL teams in the red zone. If they need the third down to score a touchdown, they have to go for it, playing exciting CFL 3-down football, which fans want to see, okay? Which the rule exists now, but they never use it, okay? All right, so what's another amazing part of my CFL Red Zone Rule, okay? If they were stopped in third down in the red zone, okay? My CFL Red Zone Kick comes into play, okay? Where, okay, if the CFL team with the ball is stopped in third down in the red zone, maintaining possession of the ball, okay, and aren't forced outside the red zone, okay, on third down, they get to kick a CFL Red Zone Kick, but not an automatic 3 points. A more challenging CFL Red Zone Kick from the 35 when you add the 7 from the 42, which would add a lot more excitement and drama, and defensively too in the red zone. If a defensive team can stop, you know, a CFL team playing with my super exciting CFL Red Zone Rule on third down with the score touchdown, that's a big defensive play. And even bigger, they would force them outside the red zone to prevent the CFL Red Zone Kick. So that's it in a nutshell, okay? That's it in a nutshell. And it's a phenomenal, super exciting, perfectly tailor-made, natural rule for our 3-down game, okay? And like the 350 plus I surveyed, they're all sold on it and fascinated by it and captivated by it, like Steve Armitage was, okay? And the 2 former Ottawa Rough Rider fans and so many other fans, that, you know, football fans and NFL only fans, younger generation fans, CFL fans that I surveyed, okay? All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the CFL gag order that they have that I mentioned a lot in my last YouTube session out on my CFL Red Zone Rule, which I know they do, because you've noticed they've never ever talked about average percentage of touchdown scored in the red zone in the CFL ever, but they're doing it now because they know about my CFL Red Zone Rule, and saying the riders are more like the, you know, it's more like they're more like the dead zone in the red zone, because they were the last year. Can you imagine? They had 100. They led the league with 102 and outs, and how many of those were in the red zone, right? With second down stop in the red zone. And they were last with only 37.5% of average touchdown scored in the red zone. Can you imagine? And like I said, last year it was going down even more than the 54.8% average. That's why my CFL Red Zone Rule is needed. And on their gag order, okay, the reason they want that because they don't want my CFL Red Zone Rule to get out to all the sports fans in Canada, because they're in fear that they would be sold on it, like all the 350 people I surveyed, and Steve Armitage has given his stamp approval. They're scared that it will become popular and more popular, and that's where we come into play. And at the Calgary 107th Grey Cup in Calgary, in that touchdown Atlantic, we want to hear thousands of people chant when this same occurrence is happening over and over and over, and it happens a lot in the red zone. When they won't go for third down to score a touchdown, they kick another boring, predictable, non-eventful, easy chip shot field goal. We want thousands of fans chanting live at the Grey Cup in Calgary, 107th Grey Cup. We want Spider CFL Red Zone Rule. And at Touchdown Atlantic, we want Spider CFL Red Zone Rule. Okay? I said okay. I'm sorry. Okay. All right, so I want to talk a little bit about the GM meetings in Quebec, okay? When Dave Naylor, I interviewed Mr. Ambrosi and asked him about the Mexican CFL draft. And by the way, something that was brought up before was said by Avash Adani, okay? He says, look what they did for the Mexican. Can you imagine? CFL draft, which 3-down nation and a lot of people made fun of, okay? Because they just think it's degrading the CFL even further into the ground as second rate, and okay. So but anyway, Arash said it's true though. They had a big splash down there, video cameras, TV cameras, everything going on like you wouldn't believe. Like they had, when they CFL hats on, when they drafted, all the CFL teams drafted. It was on Facebook, they had cameras in there, it was live on TV, everything. It was big time, lots of press there. Let's like Arash Daniel, just compare that to the so-called CFL Canadian draft. Sorry, nothing against you, TSN, it's not your fault. It's the Canadian ratio's fault. It's Ambrosie's fault. It's the Canadian Players Association and keeping, and okay, the guaranteed Canadian old linemen, they're all made up of Canadian players, the Canadian Players Association. The American players aren't properly represented. Even Foley said that. Okay, and Ambrosie's, okay, he's arm locked with them too. He's right in there with them. He's basically part of them because he was part of the Canadian Players Association and fought the CFL in court to stop because the CFL teams wanted, like every other professional team, wanted to be able to recruit and start the best players in the CFL, and Ambrosie went in there to stop it. And that's what he's trying to do now, because that's a part of the reason probably Jones left, because the same crap's going to happen. They're not going to do anything about the Canadian ratio. And I'm telling you one thing, if they don't do something about the Canadian ratio and eliminate the Canadian starting ratio, the CFL are going to continue to lose more and more fans and more season ticket holders, and they're going to walk away, which they're doing right now. Okay, so getting back to the questions he was asked. When he was asked, Dave Naylor, at the meetings in Quebec, okay, about this outrageous movement of 322 free agents going to the NFL. You know when Ambrosie applied? You know what he said? Oh, that's a good thing. What do you mean a good thing? How is that a good thing? It's like Mr. Lawless said. Now, okay, when he was part of TSN, the reporter, he says, how are CFL, and he was a Canadian player in the CFL, at least he's speaking out, because he says there's got to be more American players playing in the CFL. And Ambrosie's kind of trying to make less American players playing in the CFL. And Mr. Lawless is right. He's right. He says, how are the top CFL players, or even the top Canadian players, going to the CFL? How is that helping the CFL? And how is it helping the Canadian ratio that's not even obtainable? It's not even realistic, which has got to go. And getting back to our draft, it's a laughing. The Players Association made up of Canadian old linemen, okay, and Canadian players, they're making a fool and mockery out of our draft, okay, because they're not even committed to the combine, the top Canadian players. Or are they committed to even playing in the CFL? Or, of course, they're not even committed to the draft. They're not. The top players, they can't even draft and go into the NFL or NFL camps. And it's an embarrassment. Okay? That's why that people don't even watch. That's why it is what it is. Arash Danny, that's exactly why it is what it is. It's an embarrassment. And the only way to change that is get rid of the Canadian starter ratio and go to an open draft. And draft players, American, or like Mr. Herbie said, it doesn't matter if they're Japanese or Mexican, the few that may be down there. Okay, allow them to be drafted, the players that want to play in the CFL and not the NFL. Okay, so they can come to training camp. Not what the CFL are doing, drafting the top Canadian players, and they don't even see them. They go to the NFL. This is bad. Okay. And by the way, I was listening to Let's Talk CFL last night, and Christopher John, I think is the guy that runs it, okay, and others, they said they actually called, they can't stand Ambrosie. They actually called him an Indian. Yes, they said it, okay, and they said the Canadian ratio is not popular. It's disliked by a lot of sports fans, and they want CFL to get rid of it. They get rid of it. Okay, so I'm a little hyped up here, and I am, because, you know, something has to be said and done, okay? And Ambrosie, you know, he's pushing for the NFL window. He got the NFL window back in. When Mark Cohen there, when they were doing the CBA, the CFL owner says, like they didn't want that, and they voted against it, and they go against it twice, 3 times, and Ambrosie kept pushing it, and pushing it because the Canadian Players Association wanted it. The owners didn't want it, and of course it's back in. So that's why there's like 15 or 20 CFL players already, or getting close to that, already going to the NFL, signing the NFL. It's becoming a feeder league, a farm league, and now the coaches are going too. Because they're turned off. They're turned off with this, okay? And another thing that Ambrosie did, that's another thing he did. He changed because the Canadian Players Association keeping, okay, the Canadian Guaranteed Alignment, that's the president. They wanted a cap put on the coaches, like the cap put on the players, and Ambrosie again went, you know, locked arms with them and got this done for them. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And that the CFL is basically, now it's really evident that it's a farm league and a feeder league for the NFL. Thanks a lot, Ambrosie. You know, like, I'll tell you one thing, you know, are you the commissioner of the CFL? Are you the you know, a side man with keeping? Because you both are guaranteed Canadian alignment, okay? All right, I did say okay, and I'm glad I did. Okay, Mark Cohen, okay? No, I shouldn't be saying okay, I'm sorry about that. He would never allow this to happen. He said in Toronto during the 100th Grey Cup that he would never allow this to happen. He said if players can't commit to 2 years of playing in the CFL, and he said they should be committing 3, he says we don't want them. We'll find players that will. And you know what? Mark Cohen was right. He was right. And he didn't want an image like on Ambrosie's watch now, a farm league, feeder, minor league image like Ambrosie has now, the CFL has now. Mark Cohen was a real promoter for CFL three-down game, and one of what was best for a three-down game, and really listened, and was well-liked, and wasn't into promoting himself like a rock star type CFL commissioner like Ambrosie, okay? And because he's a Canadian alignment playing in the CFL, I'm Canadian. Mark Cohen's Canadian. Okay, CFL players are Canadian. What makes him so untouchable? Well, he's not, because I'm calling him out, okay? Mark Cohen had a lot. He was a pure gentleman and had integrity and was a real professional. Did a super job as commissioner of the CFL, and his numbers showed it. And so did his attendance for the CFL, which was a lot better than it is now. And he broke Grey Cup viewership numbers and records. When Ambrosie broke a record for the lowest watched Grey Cup game in Edmonton in 2018 since 2001 Grey Cup. Can you imagine that? And lost 1 million viewers who were watching the NFL and not the Grey Cup, okay, in our own country on that Sunday. In my opinion, Mark Cohen was not all the talk and all the action, and no action, sorry, like Ambrosie, and full of, you know what, and didn't play the political game, and with the Canadian players and the basic Canadian Players Association. Mark Cohen was far superior and a lot better CFL commissioner, who the CFL should have never pushed out, because Mark Cohen, after his departure, the CFL has been going downhill and losing more and more fans, becoming more and more unpopular ever since, and gotten even worse now under the watch of the big rock star Commissioner Ambrosie. Yes, I said it. I met Mark Cohen at the Touchdown Atlantic in Moncton, who I communicated with respect and he with respectively by email, who was first class, and you know, and he was the first one to become interested in my CFL Red-Zone Rule, which at that time was called Inside the Red-Zone Rule. Okay, Mr. Cohen also agreed, okay, that the Canadian ratio should be dropped. Even the GMs wanted it from 7 to 4, and now, of course, with the Atlantic Schooners coming back in, okay, if they become the 10th franchise, it should be eliminated completely, and it's got to be eliminated now, actually. The Canadian starter ratio's got to be eliminated now, or the CFL has no chance to grow their fan base or grow their league. And by the way, the Canadian roster ratio too got to be abolished or dramatically reduced. Okay, and this needs to be done. Okay. But the bigger problem to solve in order for this to happen is the controlling basic Canadian Players Association being run, okay, by guaranteed Canadian alignment, like keeping the president right now, like Ambrosie was, okay, who are basically running the CFL. and being a cheerleader like Ambrosi, the commissioner of CFL, who actually belonged to the Canadian Players Association, like I said before, and was a Canadian lineman himself, who fought, like I said, the CFL in court on the Canadian version. This needs drastically changed, because they are cancer for a 3-down game, and are really running the CFL for themselves. Okay, that's what's happening. Okay, and they really bullied Fleury at the time, and he was another Canadian lineman. He was president of Canadian Players. So they really bullied Mark Cohen, and even Harris, the running back for Blue Bombers, spoke out because he said he did a lot for the league and it was wrong of them, and name called him and everything, and they showed no class. Okay, all right. The structure of the CFL is terribly flawed and doesn't work, and it doesn't. And I can tell you, Mark Cohen was genuine. He did a lot for the CFL, like Harris said. And he didn't deserve that kind of abuse from Scott Fleury and the Canadian Players and the basic Canadian Players Association. I established a good relationship with Mark Cohen, who was really interested in my CFL Red-Zone Rule, and told me on one of his flights to the Grey Cup, actually a flight to the Grey Cup, that he was reviewing it and going over it in detail on the plane. So he was the one who really first became interested in my CFL Red-Zone Rule and thought it was a very interesting concept and had a lot of potential that the CFL should be seriously considering. That's what he said to me. Mark Cohen also liked my mandatory home field CFL team logo dress-up policy that he wanted to implement as well. Mark Cohen's last words to me by email when he left the CFL as commissioner was he hoped that the next CFL commissioner would establish the same kind of relationship that we had, because he said I had a lot to offer to the CFL. I want to compare the sincerity and the respectability and the professionalism between Mark Cohen and Mr. Ambrosi. Okay, after Mr. Ambrosi finished up his road trip in Halifax. I actually went up because I sent him an email prior. I said I was attending, so I thought he wanted to meet me after I did my presentation. To him on my CFL Red-Zone Rule. Never heard a word back from someone up at the end when it would show I introduced myself. And like he promised me again that he would do a full assessment and take necessary time and evaluate my CFL Red-Zone Rule properly. And he said also apply Jeff Hunt's pros and cons theory before he made his final decision. And then that was on the 23rd of February, back on the 26th of February in CFL head office, when I received an email from Ryan Jensen, and that came from him as well, but he didn't even have enough guts to put his name on it, sign it, and it wasn't written by him, saying, no, they decided not, at this time not to go with my CFL Red-Zone Rule. Come on, give me a break. That was such a snow job and a big setup, and Ambrosi, you should be ashamed of yourself, you think I'm that stupid, that gullible, well, and you get off and making a fool of me. Well, you're the big fool. You're the big fool, and you're the big losers. Look at your numbers. Yeah, it's really working, isn't it? I'm saying okay again. I'm sorry. So it was very manipulative of Mr. Ambrosi, very deceitful and very trickful. And that was his motive from the start. I'm going to say I'm sorry, because he had that plan to have me and my CFL Red-Zone Rule go away. But as you see, I'm not going away. Or my CFL Red-Zone Rule going away. And you just watch me, Mr. Ambrosi. I can guarantee you, if you put the effort and time that I put in on my CFL Red-Zone Rule and my survey, 3.5 years survey, and 4.5 years, of hard work into my CFL Red-Zone Rule, and led down the garden path like that, and made a complete fool out of it, so it was really, it's really like almost like it was like a con job, a scam. It was. I hate to say it. Yes, I said it. I don't think you'd be a fan of Mr. Ambrosi either. I'm saying okays again. I'm sorry. So let's highlight what needs to change. With the old school, like a CFL fan said, Canadian Flag Football League, and like I say, the Canadian Failing Football League, and the declining popularity of the CFL, and the overwhelming increase of popularity of the NFL, and the declining CFL TV viewership numbers, and drop of 1 million Grey Cup viewers in 2018, the lowest since 2001, and the enormous amount of empty seats throughout the CFL that don't lie. Okay? So let's look at the real issues here. Okay, which is the current structure, the Canadian Players Association, major problem. Okay? The amount of time they practice, CFL play, half of what the NFL plays, it's a joke. 3 hours a day, it's a joke. Okay? The guaranteed Canadian ratio, which got to go. It's got to go. Okay? They want to go bring in 50 new rule changes, looking at 50 new rule changes this year in 2019, and I guarantee you now, looking at a rule like my CFL Red-Zone Rule, it'll be a bunch of crap again, like their challenge flags. Okay? So that has to change. Okay? And the 1 year contracts, that's got to go. Okay, the window of the NFL, that has to go too. In order to change this, okay, the CFL fan base, and okay, and to make our 3-down game a lot better, they got to have a CFL combo, okay, and make the other necessary changes I said, and they got to have SPYDER CFL Red-Zone Rule, and they got to eliminate the Canadian starter ratio, okay, and I want to hear all you at the Grey Cup in Calgary 2017 chanting loud in the CFL Red-Zone Rule. We want SPYDER CFL Red-Zone Rule. We want SPYDER CFL Red-Zone Rule. And we can change all this crap, okay? All right? We don't want any more of your hand-me-down shoes, Mr. Ambrosi. We want some new shoes, and we want a new, bold CFL, okay, with SPYDER CFL Red-Zone Rule, and the best and available players allowed to start and play in the CFL for entire CFL game, okay, like every other professional sports league can. That's what we want. Okay, let's go for it, fans out there. Let's hear you chanting loud in the Red Zone too. At the Grey Cup in Calgary, at the Touchdown Atlantic, we want SPYDER CFL Red-Zone Rule. We want SPYDER CFL Red-Zone Rule. Signing off.